be able to listen to this again as we continue to build our skill set on how to be more effective in utilizing social media to build support for our work. And with that, let me give you a little bit of housekeeping before I jump into introducing our amazing presenters. So on your screen, you will see a box that is a question box. So if you have questions, please type those questions into the box. And at the end, we'll have an opportunity to answer those, as well as if you are interested in asking your question personally, we can also unmute you and allow you to do that as well. Also, if you should have gotten information about how to sign on for your Twitter as well as your Facebook page before this call. So we are asking that you sign on to your Twitter feed because we will need that later on in the webinar. So with that, hopefully I have remembered all of the things that I'm supposed to announce before I introduce to you our presenters. Okay, so one of our presenters this evening, I'm going to introduce you all to all of them at one time, and you'll definitely see their faces on your screen periodically, as well as you will hear their voices and they'll introduce themselves by name when you hear them. So the first person that I'm going to introduce is Geraldine Cave. She is the Senior Communications Associate with the Advancement Project, and they're ending the Schoolhouse to Prison Jailhouse Track campaign. In her role, she provides strategic communications support to grassroots organizations like the Journey for Justice Alliance. We're excited about that. And working to end the schools to prison pipeline. She joins the Advancement Project from the Collaborative Communication Group, where she served as communication specialist, maintaining a portfolio of communications project for education nonprofits and foundations. And she is a master when it comes to communication. She holds a master's of public administration from Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse University, and a BA in political science from the University of Pittsburgh. The next person that I'm going to introduce is Marla Kilfoyle. She is the executive director of the Badass Teachers Association. She is a New York City public school teacher for 30 years. She is a mother of a 14-year-old son who also is in the public school system. She's the executive director of the Badass Teachers Association, which is a national education activist organization, also known as BATS. BATS are known for their social media presence, which extends to over 150,000 followers on their social media platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. Drew Ambroggi is the communications associate with the digital media for the Advancement Project as well. He started at the Advancement Project in April of 2015 after working as an outreach coordinator for the Fulbright Scholar Program. He graduated from American University in 2014, where his studies focused on racial and economic inequalities. Drew has experience in graphic design, web development, and video production, and produced an independent documentary film about gentrification in Washington, D.C. He has also served as a research assistant in linguistic anthropology and as assistant director for a cultural empowerment program. Last but definitely not least is Jaquandra Neely Bertrand. She joined the Shop Foundation as their communications director in January of 2017. In her role, she works to advance the foundation's mission to raise its profile, working with a team of communication strategists to develop comprehensive messaging and media outreach plans. She manages the organization's brand and serves as a strategic communications advisor to one of the foundation's partners, the Educational Justice Network. She has over a 20-year experience in various aspects of communication, as well as education, nonprofit organizations, and governmental agencies. As you all can tell, we have just absolute masters in communication on this webinar as our panelists. We are honored to have them, honored to learn from them, and honored to really be able to understand more about the power of social media and how we can use it to advance our work. So with that, I will pass it on to Geraldine Cave.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Super excited to be with everyone this afternoon, talking not only about social media, but also how we can use it for the We Choose movement. One of the reasons why we wanted to make sure in our first webinar that we provided some support around social media is definitely because of its power. And social media is something that helps many different types of movements connect with other people and helps us organize really for little to no cost. And it is an excellent tool for mobilization and collective action. And it is something that right now really is touching almost everyone. So social media is definitely something that has become a standard way of communicating and interacting and engaging with other people. And its reach really spans all age groups and demographics. So one of the reasons why it is so important that we are leveraging social media is because the gross majority of Americans are now using social media in some capacity. 83% of Americans have at least one social media account. And if you are not using social media, it's likely that we're missing people who would join and support our efforts. The second thing to note about social media is that the number of people who are using it is definitely increasing. And so 2.8 billion with a B, people are using social media and used it in 2016. And that was a 21% increase from 2015. So it definitely is official. Social media is not going anywhere. And in fact, the number of people who are using it for mobilization, for collective action is increasing. And then a third thing to know really about the power of social media is that people of color are statistically more likely to use and leverage social media, particularly African Americans. When people reference things like Black Twitter, we know now from different studies that is actually, that's a real thing. Social media was and is a critical tool that folks like the Movement for Black Lives use. And obviously for us with the We Choose campaign, it's something that we can use in a very strategic way to create change. And so the message really, if we were to bottom line it, is that learning how to effectively use and harness social media is really worthy of our time and investment. No matter what your organizational sector is. And there are so many different types of social media platforms that you really can reach and engage people who are not always in your same physical space, whether they live on your street or whether they live 3,000 miles. So now we have so many platforms like Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat that really reach a lot of different demographics. So with that, one of the key questions is, okay, so what can social media actually do for us? And so it is critical, particularly when groups are doing things like direct actions, and it helps us communicate really in real time. So the map that you have here is actually a graphic depiction of the Twitter conversation of Ferguson. And you can see that Ferguson was a conversation on Twitter that was not just central to America, but was something that was happening all over the globe. So when we think about movements and the We Choose campaign, we also have to keep in mind that support does not necessarily always mean U.S. Focus, that actually there are likely people who are overseas, internationally, who are supporting our efforts. And so when we think about communicating in real time, when we're doing things like Facebook Live, it really gives us a way to instantaneously tell people what is happening. The second thing is that it can definitely amplify your voice and help you reach people who may be outside of your typical networks. And so as progressive organizations, sometimes we can definitely talk to people and really concentrate our efforts on what I like to call digital cul-de-sacs. So people who are like-minded, who are doing like-minded work, but social media, one of the great things about it is that it helps us reach sometimes the unusual suspects. It also can draw attention to the things that matter to us. So when we're doing events with the We Choose campaign, it's also a way to essentially put a megaphone to the work that we're doing. And then lastly, it allows us to really engage and be a part of the public discourse around key issues. And so whether it's a dump divorce action or whether it's a direct action that we're doing around We Choose, it's something that we can really use not only to speak specifically to stakeholders who we want to engage around our work, but also make sure that the work that we are doing are part of larger education justice conversations. And so with that, I want to hand it over to my colleague, Drew, who is really the brains behind Advancement Project's digital operation. And he's going to talk a little bit about some of the key platforms that folks are using, and later on some best practices that we can use to do things like go viral, build our followers, and really provide value to the people who follow us. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Drew.
Thanks, Geraldine. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So I wanted to start off by talking about Facebook, mostly because it is the most used social media site among all Americans of every group, of every age group. It's actually used by more than half of U.S. adults. So 68% of U.S. adults have a Facebook page. And crazy statistic, actually, so for every 6 minutes that Americans spend online, one of those minutes is spent on Facebook. So it's really using like about a sixth of everyone's time online is time on Facebook. If you're not familiar with it, Facebook's primarily used with individuals to share personal updates, things that they care about, photos, checking in at different locations, and staying in touch with their friends. And on Facebook, people are more likely to know their Facebook friends in real life as their real life friends. So there's a strong overlap there between people's in-person networks and their Facebook networks, though that's not always the case, because Facebook pages, which are different from individual profiles, can be more public facing and can reach larger groups of people outside of those smaller social networks. So on Facebook, people share articles, videos, photos, thoughts. They RSVP for events. They provide commentary. And a lot of that is because on Facebook, there's no limit on how long your post can be. You can write a poem, a piece of writing, a blog post, really, anything you want. Another thing to note about Facebook is that you might be familiar with Facebook Live, which is a newer feature kind of in the past year and a half that Facebook has implemented that allows you to live stream video. And that's really becoming the dominant medium for live streaming a video, though we're not going to really delve into that today. But next, if we wanted to talk about Twitter, and Twitter is what we're really going to be focusing on today, because for a lot of reasons, Twitter is really essential to the work that the We Choose campaign it seeks to accomplish. Twitter is also a really kind of unique social network insofar as no matter what you're posting, it's always limited to 140 characters. So that's kind of like, one long sentence, and that's all you have for each post. Twitter essentially is a microblogging platform where people post these short bits of information that can be status updates, articles, links, opinions on things. And while it's not as popular as Facebook, Twitter in total generates about 6,000 new tweets every second. So that's a ton of information that's going out to the public. It's a lot of people voicing their opinions. It's a lot of people responding to things in real time. It's much, much faster paced than Facebook. So it's used by about 21% of adults. It's used a lot for news because it's fast paced. It's a great source for folks to get real time updates. Often before the media has time to write an article, they'll post a quick snippet on Twitter because it's so short, easy, straight to the point. And the way Twitter is structured, people can follow you. People can, receive your updates without there being a reciprocal relationship. So you don't have to have friends on Twitter in the same way that you do as Facebook. And your tweets are, unless you change your privacy settings, they're accessible to everyone. So it's much easier for your voice to reach people that you might not know at all, who you might not have any connection to across the world. And Twitter's also used by public figures, organizations, a lot of celebrities use Twitter, and recently the president started using Twitter to make public statements, which is kind of an unprecedented thing, but Twitter's like heavily in the news for that reason. Twitter is also unique in that when things happen, members of the media go to Twitter to look at what public sentiment is. In the same way, police departments often go to Twitter to see if people are outraged about their actions. It's commonly used as an indicator of public sentiment. So if you want to have a voice, you really should be on Twitter. So if we can go to the next slide. You might not have a Twitter or a Facebook account, and if you don't, we've got you covered. So if you go to advancementproject.org/social-media-101, there are links to step-by-step guides which will guide with images and text and labels and arrows that will walk you through the process, even if you have no idea what you're doing. So I just want to let you know that those are there. The next thing I wanted to do is look at what is a tweet. So if you're not familiar with Twitter, there's some lingo that you might have heard that you really should know before you jump on there. So if you look up in the top left corner, there's the arrow pointing to your handle. So that's your username. That's how you're known on Twitter. So that there, it's got your little logo or your profile picture that indicates that your tweet is yours. So in this tweet, what we're essentially saying, this is just a tweet I pulled because it has all the different elements I wanted to talk about from Advancement Project's account. It says, ICYMI, which is in case you missed it, check out Jesse Williams' extended interview on The Daily Show talking about voting rights and the school to prison pipeline. So those things with the @ symbol, those are links to other people's accounts, or what we call mentions. So what that does is if you click on it, it'll take you to Jesse Williams. I don't know if you know him from Grey's Anatomy. He's one of Advancement Project's board members. You click that, it'll take you to his page. You click The Daily Show, it'll take you to The Daily Show's page. And by doing that, those people will then be alerted that you're talking about them. So it's a good way. Often it's much better to link to Jesse Williams' account or The Daily Show's account than it is to just write their name out, because in the off chance that through all their giant flood of tweets, they might see this and they might like it, or you might catch their attention. It also lets other people know for sure who you're talking about. So when we say mentioning or replying or adding someone, that's what we mean. And then if you look in the last line where there's the hash sign, or the pound sign, the number sign before school to prison, that's what we call a hashtag. So what that does is it creates a link to all other tweets that contain that hashtag. And the reason we use school to prison is because it's a lot shorter than saying school to prison pipeline. And it's a way for us to indicate that in this tweet, we're talking about the school to prison pipeline. So if anyone wanted to, they could click that and say, who else is talking about the school to prison pipeline? And that's one of the things that really makes Twitter unique, is that everyone's conversations are indexed. And if you find something you want to hear more about, you can click through hashtags to kind of join that conversation in real time. The last thing here is here where it says Jesse Williams stepping into the spotlight, that's a link to some content. So in addition to text, Twitter, you can also add links to videos and photos and whatnot. And then also at the bottom where it says retweets and likes, that's kind of the currency of performance on Twitter. So when someone sees something that they like on Twitter, they hit that retweet button, which down where it says 34, and there are those two arrows, that's the retweet symbol. And by clicking that, you're taking this post and you're sharing it with your followers. And you're saying, this is important, this is interesting, I think my followers would want to see this. And by liking something, you're not necessarily posting it to your page, but you're showing, oh, I appreciate this, I like that. It's a way of showing your interest. So that's the currency, retweets and likes. And when you post a tweet and you look at those indicators, you can really tell how your message is resonating with your audience. So if you can go to the next slide. So when you log into Twitter, this is kind of what you'll see. This is the timeline. This is the interface that you use to connect to Twitter. So up in the top right corner, that's kind of your profile. It's a shrunk down version of your profile, which tells you how many times you've tweeted, how many people you're following, and how many people follow you. The goal, or a lot of people's goal, is to build up a following that's large so you can reach as many people as possible. But you don't have to have a big number of followers to make an impact on Twitter. That's kind of a cool thing about it. And then over here in the timeline where you see these are tweets from other people. So when you follow someone, whenever they post an update, it'll be posted in this feed. That's a real-time feed of what people you follow are saying. And so you can interact with that tweet, you can respond to it directly, you can retweet it, you can use you can like it and whatnot. So this is kind of the view that you'll become familiar with. If we can move on to the next slide. This is kind of, we talked about this a little bit with social media more generally, but with Twitter, there are some more unique things that you can accomplish. With Twitter, you can recruit people to your cause. You can reach a bunch of people that may not have heard about you before when other people retweet your tweets. So Twitter, I think, is unique in its ability to spread information to parts of the world or the country that you wouldn't normally reach. You can also activate your supporters. People follow you, and you can say, alert, you need to know that this just happened and we're doing this, or we're going to have a spontaneous direct action at this place and this time, be there. So it's a really good way to keep in touch with the people who are involved in your work in real time. If we could just go back real quick. Twitter also, one of the things that makes Twitter unique, and Facebook has this to a certain extent, but Twitter has an algorithm that shows trends and shows what people are talking about. And so when a bunch of people start talking about something all at once, it tends to show up on Twitter's trending topics, which is kind of an index of what the most people on Twitter are talking about. So when you're able to galvanize people, when you're able to create a sense of urgency or get people to care about something, you can show up in those trends and people pay attention. The media really generally looks to trends on Twitter to see what they should be talking about in their reporting. So that's kind of one of the things you can do. again, getting the attention of the media. A lot of times you'll see articles on BuzzFeed and on even in the Washington Post where they link to people's tweets and they write a whole article based on something someone tweeted. So it's a really powerful way to target people. And you can also pressure elected officials. Most elected officials, at least at the federal level, have Twitter accounts, and you can mention them in your tweets so they get pinged when you say something to them. And they're not always going to respond. They're actually probably not likely to respond, but you can rest assured that someone in their office will pay attention if they get a flood of tweets on a certain issue that might come to their attention. So over here is another tweet from Advancement Project I just wanted to show. This is kind of our most popular tweet. It's about Timothy Kaufman, who was murdered by a white supremacist in New York City a couple weeks ago, and it draws attention to one of his tweets. And this one tweet got more than 10,000 retweets, meaning more than 10,000 different people decided to share this. And in total, that means that the combined reach of all those people's accounts was 1.2 million people. And this was one tweet that took me, 3 minutes to write. And it really shows you how when you strike a nerve or when you say something that resonates with people, it can explode to people that you would never have expected to reach before. So if we can go next. So I want to talk just a little bit about what to tweet. Right, it's kind of when you first started a Twitter account, you kind of want to you kind of look at that blank screen and you say, I have no idea what anyone would think is interesting. What on earth am I supposed to tweet about? And what you want to think about is who you're targeting and who you want to reach. And you want to think about what would be valuable to them. What would they want to retweet? What would they want to engage with? What would they want to hear about? So this is just kind of a collection of adjectives that I kind of come back to time and time again when I'm thinking about what I want to post. You want to make sure that tweets are helpful, that they're useful, that they provide information that's unique to kind of your perspective. Also, Twitter can be a really witty and funny place. A lot of memes and jokes come out of Twitter. So when it's time to be funny, I mean, that's a great place. That's a great angle to take. So anyways, this is something you can reference later on. If we can move to the next slide. This is kind of a deeper dive. I'm not going to go into all this right now, but what this wheel shows is based on a study by the Harvard Business Review, and they looked at the reasons why people share things. And they found these as kind of the main big reasons, and they kind of break down to different categories. People want to either, when they go to share something, they want it to either say something about themselves and their opinions and their stance. They want other people to see it. They say, oh, this is really important. More people need to understand this. More people need to hear about this. That could motivate them to share it. Or, a lot of times tweets that do well are tweets that are really breaking, right? So you're the first person to talk about something, or you're able to formulate a reaction to something very quickly, based on your expertise, or you're in the right place at the right time. So this is also something you could reference later, just to look about and to always be thinking about being strategic and really thinking actively about how people see your tweets and what you're offering them when you're tweeting. Twitter is a value exchange. You're providing something and other people are saying, yes, that's something I want, and I'll help boost this out to other people. So if we go to the next slide. I just wanted to provide some tips on just how to be excellent on Twitter. It takes a lot to get used to, so I would probably actually start at the bottom of this list and say experiment. You can't really mess up. You don't want to say something embarrassing or self-deprecating or that could be used against you. But the worst that could possibly happen when you're sharing something that is appropriate is people don't react, and it's okay, and you can move on and try again. Especially when you're starting out building a following, you want to just be persistent. Just keep tweeting. People will eventually take notice if you have something important to say. So again, providing value, I really can't drill that home far enough. If you're wondering why you're not getting retweets, it's probably because you're repeating something that's already out there, or because you're not targeting the right people, or because people don't understand what you have to say. You also want to stay connected. Whenever possible, you want to add a hashtag, you want to mention someone, you want to use a trending phrase, because that means that your tweet is more connected to different places where people on Twitter might see it and might engage with it. You don't want to overuse hashtags, but you definitely want to include one or two in each tweet where possible. And again, hashtags you can see in other people's tweets. You might see a hashtag that one of your friends uses, and you might want to use it and add something else to the conversation that's going on around that hashtag. For example, we choose, right? Everyone takes that hashtag and uses it to add their own perspective about why it's important to preserve public education and why it's important to fight for education equity. Another thing that's good is sharing visual content. Statistics show that tweets that have images in them are always going to perform better as tweets that are just text. That's just kind of how our brains are. You don't want to put an image that's totally irrelevant, but when there's a relevant image you can attach to your tweet, that generally is going to get more people's attention. And then the other thing that I would say is this ABC rule, always be connecting. So that kind of means a lot of things. It means look at other people's tweets, like them, respond to them, retweet them, make connections with people, show up on people's radar that way. But it also means offline, when you're not on Twitter, tell people that you're on Twitter. When you're speaking at a public meeting or a panel or something, let people know your Twitter account. For example, my Twitter account is at DREWAMBROGI, at Drew Ambrogi. I always try to plug that just because I might make a connection out of it with someone who I have something in common with or I can partner with in the future. And again, experiment. It's okay to mess up. Let's move on. I know we're a little tight for time. So as you start your Twitter account and as you get going, you want to think about building a following and increasing your number of followers so your message can reach more people. One of the ways you can do that is by being consistent and tweeting consistently every day or a couple times a week. You don't want people to look at your page and say, wow, this person hasn't tweeted since 2013. I really don't want to follow this person, because they're not going to tweet anything. Right? So if you make a commitment to yourself, I'm going to tweet once a week, I'm going to tweet twice a week, I'm going to tweet 3 times a day, keep it up so that people know what to expect from you and that they can, rely on you. The other thing is that Twitter is not just about pushing out what you have to say and not paying attention to what people say back. And so it's about reciprocating. For every time someone retweets what you have to say, you want to retweet what they have to say too. Twitter is about conversations. It's about exchange. So I think one of the worst things you can do is just use it as a broadcast network to talk about yourself, right? You want to start conversations. You want to answer people's questions. And again, like I said, whenever you can, let people know you're on Twitter. If you want to keep your followers, you be interesting on Twitter. But if you want to gain followers, you really got to be interesting in real life and let people know that they can continue to catch up with you on Twitter. And then the last thing I'll say is use Twitter etiquette. There's no clearly defined Twitter etiquette, but there's some things you want to consider. You don't want to use all caps all the time. It really kind of looks like you're yelling. The 140 character limit can force you to condense what you're saying, but you don't want to use, and so people use a lot of abbreviations, but don't abbreviate things to the point that it's unclear at all what the words you're saying are, or that your grammar is kind of disjointed to the point that it doesn't really make sense. You really want to make your things easy to read. And then the last thing I'll say is avoid spamming. Don't tweet the same thing over and over again, even if it's really important to you, because for one, Twitter actually looks for accounts that are tweeting the same thing over and over and over again, and it'll mute those accounts so that they don't show up in other people's feed. They won't necessarily notify you of that, but that will happen because Twitter is on the lookout for bots and things that are programmed to automatically tweet things again. And the last thing you want to do is be mistaken for a bot. So you want to change it up. And I think we can move on from here now. So I'm going to hand it off to DeQuandra for, she's going to talk about scheduling content and then some more kind of strategic ideas about how you approach your own kind of Twitter plan.
Thank you so much, Drew and Geraldine. Can everybody hear me okay? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. All righty, that was really great, Geraldine and Drew. Good evening, everyone. I am DeQuandra Neely Bertrand. I'll just repeat, I'm Director of Communications for the SHOT Foundation, as well as the Education Justice Network. So by now, you realize you've been presented with a gold mine of information about social media from Geraldine and Drew, and I bet some of you are feeling like this is a lot of information to process, right? So that's natural, that's normal, and I felt the same way when I first got started eons ago, back when MySpace was a thing. I wonder if anybody even remembers what MySpace is. I'm feeling very much like a dinosaur. But what I want to do with my section of this presentation is to help to sort of operationalize and systematize what you learned from Drew and Geraldine. So I'm going to be talking about scheduling the content that you post on to Twitter. So once you get onto Twitter and you follow just a few accounts, and I hope by now many of you who are new to Twitter have gotten on and have followed a few accounts, what you start to see is that it can get overwhelming very quickly. If your Twitter feed is anything like mine, you see dozens of tweets scrolling by the nanosecond, and you learned pretty quickly that being active on Twitter can really require a lot of time and attention, and it's just plain overwhelming. And as Geraldine and Drew referenced, there are really important strategic reasons to be there, to build your presence, to build your brand, to spread your messages, to talk with your allies, and to share information. But really, who among us has that many hours to be online? So it's really difficult to keep up with your posting. So I want to make the case for scheduling your content for any given day or week or period that makes sense to you. And there are many free tools available online. We'll talk about them in just a second, but they exist to help you plan and to deliver your content at a time when is right for you. And that will ultimately help you regain control of your time while still maintaining an active Twitter presence, so you can take advantage of the true advantages of Twitter that Drew and Geraldine talked about. So I'm going to talk with you about the tools that can help you schedule your content. I'm going to talk about TweetDeck, Hootsuite, and Buffer. But know that there are many, many more tools that are available, and many are free and have paid subscriptions, and they all have different pros and cons, but they're all fairly similar in nature to one another. The idea is to take content, post it in, and tell the system when you want a tweet to go out. I'm going to talk about the ones that are kind of considered the industry leaders, and some of the most, so they're the most popular tools to schedule content. So let's first talk about TweetDeck. TweetDeck is a program that helps users manage their Twitter accounts. And to get there, you would type in that URL at the bottom, tweetdeck.twitter.com. It allows you to save your tweets for future dates, but you can do a number of other things with it. You can set up alerts. You can view multiple timelines. If you could, take a quick look at what you see there in the little mock-up, you'll see how, and we'll see a little bit later, you get a bunch of columns to do a number of things to manage your content, but also schedule it. I just want to say that TweetDeck is exclusive to Twitter. The other dashboards that we'll talk about are for scheduling things like Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and LinkedIn, but TweetDeck is specifically for Twitter. But it's very easy to use, very easy to learn, very intuitive. And so, I recommend that it, may be one of the scheduling tools that you first try out. All right, now let's move on to Hootsuite. I grew up on Hootsuite. This is really one of the standard bearers for social media monitoring and scheduling. It's really this one-stop shop tool for anybody who manages social media. And unlike TweetDeck, you can manage your Facebook pages, your profiles, your groups. You can manage Google Plus from Hootsuite. You can manage Instagram, LinkedIn, and a number of other social media platforms. In addition, you can also manage Hootsuite from a mobile app or from a browser plugin, and there are free and paid options. And this is a little bit what it might look like for you, but I just want to reference, unlike TweetDeck, this is a third-party tool. And what that means is that you have to authorize Hootsuite to connect to your social media profiles to give it permission to post to it. That's one of the key differences. The same is true for Buffer. Buffer is quickly becoming really a heavyweight player in the social media management game. So, it operates a lot like Hootsuite, but it's I think what a lot of people like about it is that its interface is so clean, so that you're not distracted by all of this dizzying content that can go by. And so like Hootsuite, again, it covers many different Facebook, it covers many different social media platforms. And it, like Hootsuite, has free and paid options. So I think what is one of the best things for you to do is to try out some of these and see what you like, play around and learn which one works the best for you. And now I'm going to show you an example of how to schedule a tweet with TweetDeck. All right, so I am going to change the screen that I show you. I'm going to get back to Shot Foundation's TweetDeck. All right, and I'm just going to run through what this might look like for you. So again, this is the TweetDeck dashboard. And I'm part of a social media management team, and so I have a lot of columns that you can customize TweetDeck to display what you need. I like to see my scheduled tweets, the tweets that have already gone, and then see my mentions and notifications as well. But in this first column is where we typically get started. And so this is your composition column. This is where you will post your tweet and make decisions about when it will appear in your timeline for your friends and followers to see. And so you can just type something in as an example, but I'm going to go grab some content as a little preview of an exercise that you'll be doing in a few minutes. Going to grab this content from the We Choose platform, and I'm just going to paste it right into that box, right? Now, Drew referenced the importance of having digital content, right? Visual content to go with your tweets, and he's absolutely right. You get a lot more engagement and a lot more eyeballs on your content if you draw users in with something visual. So you can see I've already practiced this many times tonight, but I'm just going to run through it again to show you how it's done. So I've entered in some content, and then I have a few decisions to make. I can click tweet, and it will appear on my timeline right away and in your followers' timeline. Or I can schedule it. And this is where I'm going to go in just a second. But I'm going to add a graphic that we developed earlier. And it pops right in there. So right now I have some content, I have some images, and this little counter here is telling me how many more characters I have left in the 140 character limit that Twitter imposes. All right, so now I can tweet or I can schedule. And then you get a pop-up if you click this button here that allows you to determine when you would like this to appear. I can choose, as you can see, any day I want to choose, but I'm going to say, why not let's do it tonight, right? Because one of the reasons I like to keep this column here for scheduled tweets is because that helps me keep an eye on where there may be any gaps and content where there may be some dead, some silence, and so I can put something in there. So, I was looking at my Shad's Twitter scheduled posts a little earlier tonight, and I was noticing, we're not posting anything after 10:43 Eastern PM. So, that means our followers on the West Coast really won't be hearing from us, after they, finish dinner, which is, probably prime time for a lot of Twitter scrolling, right? At a time when we want to be active. So, I try to post things a little bit later at night too, even though I will be knocked out by 11:37. So I decided I'll put something up at that hour. So just to show you what that looks like, I'm going to just change the time here. I like to use odd times to post. And it's probably sort of a Twitter 301 reason for why I do that. But basically, I think there's less competition for certain times. And then this button changes to, instead of tweet immediately, it gives you an option to tweet at the time that I just selected. And then you click that button. And then that disappears, and it will appear in your scheduled column here. And it's as simple as that. And you can do that for, unlimited amounts of content. So I'm going to switch back to my presentation and give you a few tips on do's and don'ts of scheduling. I just want to do a very quick check to make sure everybody can see my presentation again.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So let's talk about some things that you should try to do when scheduling content. So, absolutely schedule your time-sensitive content ahead of time. We Choose is a perfect example of how you can harness the power of scheduling your tweets. Because this month, for example, we're talking about, what is it? The platform this month is zero tolerance policies. Is that correct? So, why not take a few minutes to schedule some tweets to run throughout the month about this topic? For you, maybe certain observances or holidays may be important. We know when these days are going to fall, so it's a good idea to go ahead and schedule them now. And I'll just reiterate some of the things that Drew mentioned earlier. Do be consistent. Once you get on, like he said, you've really made a commitment to be active and to provide helpful content to your audiences. So try to produce, content on a regular basis. That being said, you really still want to leave time for real-time interaction. The whole purpose of social media is to be social. So while you can schedule, 99% of your content, you do want to get on live and personally interact with your allies and your supporters. Sometimes it's important to be present and live as opposed to just having that scheduled voice. Create evergreen content. Evergreen content is any content that can run at any time because it doesn't have a time sensitivity. So think of things like, things that I personally like for my personal Twitter. I like, great quotations. You might, you won't want to tweet something like your mission statement or your values or various facts about you and your organization. These are content items that can run at any time. So as you look through TweetDeck or Hootsuite or Buffer, you will sometimes see that maybe you scheduled a lot of content, but you have a gap. Evergreen content is there to fill that space. So there's a lot of things you have to balance here, but let's talk about some things that fall under don't, things you want to try to avoid. And again, we're kind of all, we've learned from the same Twitter school here, so I'm going to be repeating a little bit of what my colleague said earlier. Please try to avoid repeating posts on Twitter verbatim. He just explained to you why that's a problem. Some of the techniques that people use when they need to quickly revise things, they'll use that ICYMI, that in case you missed it, or alert or reminder. They'll revise and add a few words or take out a few words or change the image or do something to make that new content. And again, the last thing you want to do is, run afoul of that Twitter algorithm and have yourself branded as a spammer and have people not be able to hear your messages. Don't excessively self-promote. There's something called the 411 rule that is a good rule of thumb. I don't follow it religiously, but I follow the spirit of it. Again, it was referenced a little bit earlier. The spirit of it was that, for every one self-promotional or self-serving post that you make, you want to have at least one retweet of somebody else and 4 pieces of relevant original content from other sources. Right, so that your timeline is not full of, hey, look at me, talk about us, look at me, I'm so special, right? So you want to be sharing useful, valuable content at all times, and scheduling is a great way to be able to just get that at a glance. So the tools that I talked about are great listening devices. Don't neglect the other features. They do more than schedule. So, you saw Shot's TweetDeck setup, and you saw all of those columns. Those columns are essentially listening to conversations on Twitter. I personally, through the Shot TweetDeck, follow the We Choose hashtag. So whenever somebody posts using the hashtag We Choose, I see it, so I know what's going on. I can see when it gets active. I can see when it gets less active. I know whenever someone mentions the name of the president and CEO of the Shot Foundation and all of the principles of the Education Justice Network. And on my personal account, this may be helpful for you. On my personal account, I follow brands that are inspiring, brands that produce great content, so that I can, constantly be inspired about how to create great content. And once you get into the swing of things, you'll also want to periodically take time out to learn from your results. I look over my content on TweetDeck, and I try and probe it to find out things like, what kinds of content works best for me? What got the most engagement? And there are a whole host of other lessons to be gleaned from these social media management tools. And scheduling is really one of the most important ones, but it's just one. So I hope that you will give them a try as you get acclimated to Twitter and want to harness it for greater use. And with that, I'm going to just say thank you and tell you how to get in touch with me and turn it back over to my colleague, Marla.
Good evening, everybody. This is Marla Kilfoyle. I am the Executive Director of the Badass Teachers Association. So At this time, I'm going to actually ask you to please make sure that you have your Twitter account up on your computer and ready to go, because we're going to actually be engaged here in a few minutes on what we like to call a mini Twitter power hour. This is kind of really what the We Choose Coalition is known for. We have trended on Twitter both times that we have engaged in a power hour. And as Geraldine and Drew and DeQuanda were talking, it's a really powerful way to get your message across. BATS has been very successful in, tweeting to lawmakers and other people that we want to hear our message. So it's a really powerful tool for you, especially if you want to reach out to lawmakers or policymakers. One of the most powerful things that we use is something called the thunderclap. And some of you may have seen this online and thought, oh, what is this? How do I join it? But this is a really successful tool that we use mostly on Twitter. If we want to launch like a power hour or a Twitter storm, we'll get people to sign up for this. So you can think of a thunderclap as sort of millions of people screaming the same message on the same day at the same time. And so this slide you see is one that was launched out from Planned Parenthood Action Fund. They had 12,868 people support it, and it had over 7 million reach. So this was a pretty powerful thunderclap. So at the time that this went off, which if you can see it was September 29th, this is the message that 12,000 people tweeted out all at the same time. So it's a powerful tool that you can use to support the We Choose Coalition, because we do use this a lot, or any other activist group that maybe is initiating a thunderclap. So we can go to the next slide. So this is an example of something that the Ohio Bats are doing right now. They're going to be doing a thunderclap, which actually is set to go off on April 12th at 12 o'clock. And this is the message so far that 104 supporters will tweet out on that date at the same time. So this is kind of like that same message that we know went out, that will be going out on the 10th. So this is one of the powers of Twitter. So anyway, we're going to ask you at this time if you'd please have your Twitter feed ready to go and get ready to tweet. What we've done here is we've written about 5 tweets for you. And so what we're going to ask you to do right now is we're going to ask you to pick one of these tweets, if you would. And we're going to go ahead and ask you to type it into your Twitter feed to tweet out. And so we'll give you a few minutes. And Bob, I was wondering if you could switch over to my screen so I could go up onto my Twitter feed.
Doing it now.
Thank you.
You have to accept it. There you go.
There we go. All right. So what you'll see is I have the BATS Twitter feed up here. And so I'm going to actually cheat, and I'm going to copy and paste one of those tweets in because I don't have time to type it. So you're going to click your little tweet button here, and you're going to get a little box. So you're going to be able to type your tweet in. I'm just copy and pasted mine in. And as Drew and DeQuandra were just saying, sometimes it's always good to add a picture. I'm not going to do that right now because I didn't have one lined up. But if you wanted to add a picture, you could click and add, well, actually I can. So I'll just add like the We Choose banner. And if you go ahead and click tweet, we can tweet it out. So we go tweet. And now we're going to check at the hashtag to see how many of you were able to do that. So Bob tweeted. Looks like, well, Step Up Louisiana didn't. So we'll wait just a minute and see if anybody is going to appear on that. Oh, there we go. March for Public Ed gave us a nice tweet there. Is there Attorney for Justice, Detroit Youth Report. Okay, great, great. All right. So how about if we go back? We'll go back. If you want to go ahead and pick another tweet to type up there. And you can just, you got to make sure you use that We Choose tab there. And same thing, tweet it out. Whoops, I'm already automatically in the We Choose part here. Once again, I would add a little picture and click my tweet. And off we go. Oh, good. Woohoo! So we got lots of cool tweets. There's Geraldine. Great job, everybody. Great job. One last thing that I'm going to show you, and then we'll open it up to questions that Drew wanted us to show you, is you can become a member of the We Choose list. So right now we have 39 members that are a part of this list. So if you want to kind of join us on this platform, you can go right over here. You can come right to Bats if you want, and become a member of the We Choose list. So that's it for me, and happy tweeting.
Outstanding. Thank you all so much. So much information. I know that a lot of people are saying to themselves, oh my gosh, can I do this? And can I stay consistent with this? So there's a number of questions that came out, and I want to make sure that I have an opportunity to ask them. So the first question came from Jessica Todd. And her question is, how can a growing movement most effectively use social media to transfer followership into actual activism? So you have people that are active on social media, they like to tweet, they like to do, Facebook and all of that. But she wants to know based on you all's, experience or recommendation, what you've seen, how do you actually move it from what they're doing online into physical action? Letter writing, attending marches, calling representatives, and actually getting more active in organizations.
This is Marla. I'll go ahead. I'll just quickly tell you what we do in BATS is that we use our media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, to mobilize people to action. We'll use like Action Network, where maybe we might want to have people send a letter to our federal lawmakers. We've done that with the We Choose Coalition as well. For example, the huge movement that the We Choose Coalition just did against Betsy DeVos. We used our Action Network letter campaign system to create sort of a canned letter that all people had to do was plug in their information, and it automatically sent the letter to their federal lawmaker. So what we're able to do is take that link to that action campaign and blast it out on all of our networks. We did a thunderclap for that as well. And I think we were a very big part of the We Choose Coalition of sending thousands and thousands of letters to federal lawmakers and tweets and whatnot. So that's one way that you can do it. You can use links to other platforms that help write sort of canned letters that people can send to lawmakers.
Does any other presenter want to speak on that question?
Yeah, sure. I would agree with everything that Marla said. I'd also want to point out that, I think sometimes we think about people on social media and just wanting to kind of be an armchair activist and tweet from home and and not get involved. But I think in my experience, I've found that that's not exactly true. That a lot of times at Advancement Project, we get people reaching out to us to say, I'm done tweeting. I want to get involved. What can I do? So people are really, especially in this moment now, hungry for ways to get involved. So I would say that a great part of your content strategy is sharing events that are going on in your community, especially if they're not your organization's events per se, but giving a boost to other people's events. Because then when it comes time that you've got something you want to turn out folks for, you're reciprocating, and you can tap people and say, hey, can you help me spread the word about this thing? It's always good to be kind of building up that social capital and really thinking about, how you can invest in your network so that they'll invest in you when the time comes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that response. We also have a couple of really nuts and bolts questions, and I'm glad that Ms. Jolene Collins asked these questions. So, do the links count against the 140 word count? So when you have to put at whatever the organization or person that you want to be alerted that you're talking about them, does that count towards your 140 word count characters limit?
Yes.
Yes, it does. So
Okay.
it's challenging. Twitter is experimenting with changing that slightly, right? So if you reply directly to someone's tweets, those at mentions no longer count. But it used to also be the case that when you put a photo in, that counts. But they recently changed that too. So now you can add a photo without taking up any characters. But if you link to an article, that will take up some of your space. So you do need to really be strategic. It can be tough. So you got to really be intentional about what you're saying and try and especially with the work we do around education equity, it can often be really difficult to express, systems of systemic disenfranchisement in a one sentence, But another thing you can do is that people tend to do when they have a larger sentiment to express is you can reply to your own tweet. And what that does is it'll chain those two tweets together so that when people see them, they automatically see your reply to that tweet and continue reading. So that's kind of one way you can get around it that I think is useful, but it's a constant challenge. You got to be crafty.
You do. This is DeQuendra, and I'll add to that. Yeah, those are great techniques to sort of decrease the number of characters you take up. One thing I've seen people do, especially when they are posting images like photographs from events that they're at, when you want to say who's in this picture, right? So rather than mention them directly in the tweet, you can tag people just like on Facebook. You can tag photos on Twitter and tell Twitter who's in that photo. And so your followers will know that too. And that's just one little trick you can also add to your arsenal so that you're not taking up all of your character count in the actual tweet.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I see another question here as well from Jolene Collins. When scheduling tweets, does it automatically know what time zone you're in, or is that something that you specifically need to change? And then also she asked, when checking analytics, what is a good percentage range for engagement?
So the answer is yes. The system will know what time zone you're in when you set up your account on TweetDeck, Hootsuite, Buffer, any number of those tools. You will have to specifically indicate your time zone, and so it will post at those specific times. And you heard me mentioning a little earlier because I work for two national organizations. I very much think about people who are in different time zones. So I'm scheduling posts for people who don't share my time zone. And analytics. So the question is, it varies. Advancement Project gave you some analytics on some of their posts, and those are some really popular tweets that they shared with you that got some astronomical. When you're getting started, I would not expect very high levels of engagement, but you'll learn over time what kinds of content creates really good response and shares and likes from your followers. I'm kind of hesitant to say a specific percentage that is something you should be looking for. Don't know what specific organization you are tweeting on, but I say set a goal for yourself. Have your baseline. Look at what you've been doing so far. See what level of engagement, and then experiment to determine how you can get to the level that you want to reach. What you think is reasonable for you. One of the good things about Twitter analytics is that you can see, some of the top performers on Twitter. There are a number of tools that can show you that as well, and so you can see what other organizations are doing and their influence level and things like that. But I think the best answer is to set your baseline and determine a goal for yourself and experiment on how you can reach it. What frequency of content you might need to post, who you might need to engage with, who you need echoing your tweets to get to that level, and see what it takes to get there. It may also include some promoted tweets down the line, but that's something that's so specific to you.
Thank you so much. I have a question from Robin Hiller. Her question is, what is a good meme maker program and one that allows uploads of photos and different fonts?
I would highly recommend Canva. It's canva.com. It has, like pretty much everything. It's got free options and not so free options, but I find that its free options are substantial enough. I use Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and stuff, but when I don't have a lot of time, I go right to Canva and I can get what I need. That you can upload your logo, you can upload photos, you can change fonts and colors. And it's all within your browser, so there's no software to install. They even have templates for you to pick the size of your graphic based on what social media outlet your graphic is intended for, which can be really helpful because those are always changing. I think there are a lot of other tools, but that one I know is pretty user-friendly, and I know that it's gained quite a bit of popularity since it started. So again, that's Canva, like canvas without an S.
This is Geraldine. I would also say that I would also highly recommend Canva. One of the things that it will do when you decide to create a design is that it will essentially walk you through the entire process. So Canva is also like, it's a design platform. So folks who really don't know anything about graphic design can really create some really cool stuff. And so they will say, here's a Pinterest graphic, here's the Facebook post, and they'll even go as far to say, if you want to post this for a Facebook app, right? Like that. They'll even have the sizes and the dimensions for you all laid out so that you can see what it will look like before you put it up on social media, and the dimensions will be there right for you. So I would echo what Drew had said tremendously.
This is DeQuendra. I'll add to that. Yeah, Canva is one of the most popular tools. If you are looking for an alternative, you may want to try Adobe Spark, S-P-A-R-K. I'm a Photoshop user myself, so I don't have a whole lot of experience with it, but Canva and Spark will get the job done for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Marla, do you have any other ideas on that or anything you want to share?
Well, I have a graphics team that works for BATS, and I know that they use both of the systems that were just mentioned. They also use Paint. That's another one that they go in and they use. I am not a graphics designer. I am a teacher. So sometimes I will actually just go in and use PowerPoint. And, if I need to get something done, I just pull up a PowerPoint slide and I can copy and paste anything to a PowerPoint slide. The visual of it is not as pristine, but it works if you make the graphics big enough. So I use PowerPoint and I change the slide to a JPEG or a PNG and just save it. So that's, kind of for people that are comfortable with PowerPoint.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have time for a few more questions, you all. So if you do have questions, definitely send them to us so we can make sure that we get them answered for you. One question came from Erica Clark, and her question is: when you reply to a tweet, who sees that? Who sees that?
That's a good question too, because that's also changing a little bit. When you reply to a tweet, it will notify the person whose tweet it is, and so they'll obviously see it. But also, your following in general will see it. It used to be the case that reply wouldn't show up as much in people's public news feeds, but it seems to be that they've changed the way that it's laid out a little bit so that it is seen more broadly, and your newsfeed no longer distinguishes between those two things. If you want your reply to be seen, one thing that Twitter also introduces is that you can retweet yourself, so that people can see your reply even more broadly. I know that a lot of people, when they reply, will put a dot at the beginning of their reply, so to ensure that it's seen in the public feed. If you've been on Twitter in the past 2 weeks, you'll notice that that's like no longer possible when you're doing direct replies. So Twitter is working to eliminate that distinction. I don't know if that helps at all. But another thing, just relevant to this, don't be embarrassed to retweet yourself. The average lifespan of a tweet is less than an hour, right? After an hour, generally, people won't see it as much in their feed because of the real-time nature of Twitter. There's obviously exceptions to that if it gets a lot of traction. But what you can do to extend the lifespan of a tweet is, if you have a tweet from yesterday that you didn't see, that didn't get as much traction as you want, but it's still relevant, you can retweet it the next day and get a whole nother boost. So don't be afraid to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Man, this is like such a valuable information. So once again, you all, we have a few more minutes for additional questions. If you do have them, please send it in. I have another question from G2 Brown. His question is that he is on TweetDeck and is having difficulty seeing how to schedule tweets. Also, how to add a different account. So can you all help out with that question?
Yeah, I mean, I can if Bob, whoops, did I sign off though? Yeah, I can if Bob wants to change me over.
I will do that.
Okay. All right. Can you guys see the TweetDeck?
Yes.
Okay. So G2, what you would want to do is you want to just take your tweet, right? So if I want to schedule this to go out tomorrow, just put a little graphic in there. So if I want this tweet to go out to Journey for Justice tomorrow, we choose public ed over the illusion of choice. So I've got everything there. I've typed my tweet in. I've added a little We Choose graphic. Now you want to go down to the scheduling tab. It says schedule the tweet. So you want to click on that. And if I want this, today is the 11th, so if I want this to go out tomorrow on the 12th, I can do that. I can, maybe I want it to go out at 9 o'clock in the morning, so I can schedule it to go out. And then I can tweet it. So now it's in the queue to go out. So that's how you use it. That's your scheduling tab right there. I would be dead in the water if I didn't have that. So if you want to add accounts to, you know, you can kind of see up here that I'm running a couple of different accounts. I have a friend that's running for office. I have Long Island Opt Out. I have my personal account, NYSAPE, New York State Bats, the Union, and another account that I run. So if you want to add an account to your page, there's these tabs down here, this whole column here. I haven't done this in a while, but you want to click accounts. And down here it says join another team. You can, I can't put one in because I can't think of one. Let me think of one I might be able to add to this. Here, I'll add California Bats to this. So I would click add Cali Bats. So if I want to add them here, I don't know if it's going to let me add it. Oh yeah, it is. And then you're going to get this kind of look. And so I've just now added Cali Bats to this group. So once again, you go to accounts. All right. So if I open it up, you'll see now that Cali Bats has been added to this thing. So once again, you go to accounts, scroll, whoops. Well, you're going to be right down here. I don't know if you can see it. And you're just going to type in the account of who you want to add. And then it'll prompt you to add it to that column or to that account. I hope that helped out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that question, Marla. I mean, answering that question, Marla. So definitely appreciate it. So, and I'm going to give everybody just a few more seconds to send any questions that they may have. But I want to make sure as we prepare to close, definitely want to say thank you so much to all of our presenters, Ms. Geraldine Cave, Senior Communications Associate from the Advancement Project, Marla Kilfoyle, Executive Director of the Badass Teachers Association, Andrew Ambrogi, Communications Associate from the Advancement Project, and DeQuandra Neely Bertrand from the Schott Foundation and the Education Justice Network. We appreciate you all so much. As someone who is learning about social media, I'm definitely excited to really learn some of the nuts and bolts of how to really be able to balance this out in the midst of all of the work that we're doing, not only in our local work, but also with this new national campaign, the We Choose campaign, and how we can really elevate, you know, the work that we're doing as we use social media as a tool to really do that. As we prepare to close, I do see a couple of final questions. One from Jessica Todd, and her question is, are there any final suggestions from the panelists on when is the best time to tweet, the days, the times, etc., and when is the best traffic? So before I pass it to the presenters, I'll make sure that we send out to you all a resource that actually G2 got from an amazing workshop that he went to recently on that very thing. So we'll make sure that we send that out to everyone. But I'll also pass it on to the presenters as well, just to kind of share their perspective on that.
Okay, well, I will start. This is DeQuandra. And so, you know, if you study social media like we do, you've probably read 1,000 articles about when the best time to tweet is. And they sometimes say very different things. But you want to really think about two things. Think about how you use Twitter, and think about what you've learned by watching how your Twitter account performs, and that will really give you all the information you need to know. Those studies and research things, they give you guidelines, they give you some really well-researched options for when you might want to tweet. For example, I think what I hear the most is that, from a study of, a gazillion billion tweets, the early to mid afternoon, 1 to 3 p.m. is probably the best time to tweet. That's probably true very globally. That may not be true for your audience. So you really need, that's why analytics is so important. You really need to pay attention to that. So that's the advice that I would offer on that.
Anyone else want to chime in on that before we prepare to end? Okay, all right. Well, thank you all so much once again for participating in this incredible webinar. This will definitely not be the last webinar that we'll do. Our goal is to really be able to provide the support and the training that you all need. So definitely give us your feedback, your perspective, what you think went well, what you learned, what you'd like to learn more of. Definitely send that information, that feedback to us. If you're interested in getting in contact with our presenters, definitely just contact me directly with any questions, and I'll definitely get the information to them. Thank you all so much for your incredible work on behalf of all of our students and our families as we strive and work hard to be able to create a better world for all of us and achieve education justice, education equity, not the illusion of school choice. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening. You will be receiving a number of resources as a result of participating in this webinar. It was recorded, so we will be getting that information to you, as well as a number of other materials as well connected to this webinar. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful evening.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.